In this video, I'll reveal the final boss and show you how I crafted the 3-stage boss fight and the boss level. So, let's jump right in. Right off the bat, I wanted the boss character to live inside a castle. So, to get things going, I figured out that I had this prototype level, which is sort of tall and narrow and as such a perfect tower for a castle. So the next step was then to beautify the castle, and so I pixeled this brick style tile map and background. This was quite smooth given that I already had prepared 2 tile maps before. What was then not as smooth was to come up with an idea how to design the second tower. But after some heavy brainstorming, I recalled that I had never really used these ninja enemies in any of the previous levels. So wherever this design should go, it should contain plenty of ninjas. Alright, let's zoom into the ninja scene. I mean, the enemy itself is not complicated at all. It is just a simple statue and it shoots laser beams at regular intervals. So the actual hard work was to make sure everything works as it should. Roughly put, what it means is this. We first shoot a raycast, which is simply an invisible line with a start and an end point. If the player touches this line, we signal damage to the player and it's game over. And on the visual side, the laser is drawn with a nicely textured line 2D and some particles which mimic flowing dust. And so with these laser statues, I decided to divide the second tower into few laser rooms, each a bit more difficult than the previous one. Okay, so now that we have the level designed, it's time to start with the boss fight design. Before I had anything done, I spent at least a few hours designing the concept of the boss and the underlying lore. You know, who he is, why has he become evil, and so forth. And of course, what would be more fitting to deliver the final fight for Professor Bubbles than the mean old Dr. Pop? Alright, so here's the thing. The player meets the Dr. Pop during 3 stages, where each stage, again, ramps up the difficulty a tiny bit. For the first stage, I crafted this simple movement model and needle projectiles, which is quite doable in my opinion. To spice the drama a bit, I implemented this neat dialog window, which is simply a Godot canvas layer with a text label and an animation player, so that the dialogue is always shown on top of the paused gameplay. One cool add-on effect I added here is a low-pass filter applied to the background music. So whenever the dialogue plays, it kind of amplifies the effect of the gameplay being pushed into the background. After the first stage, Dr. Pop escapes into his cellar, which is turned into a discotheque. The highlight of this part is definitely the flashy background with 2 shaders, which create the reflections of a disco ball and colorful lights of a dance floor. There is also a nice twist in the gameplay, as Dr. Pop is no more vulnerable to the bubbles, but instead he receives damage only when hit by a lightning strike. The last boss fight phase takes place in high temperatures. Also, as Dr. Pop realizes that Professor Bubbles cannot be defeated by his ordinary armors, he appears to the scene with a megalomaniac fire/rocket/bomb spawning machine. What I personally find quite pleasing here is the waving heat in the background. Big thanks goes to the fellow game dev BitBrains who introduced this shader in one of his devlogs. So what actually is going on here is a big particle emitter combined with the displacement shader. And finally, after all 3 stages, Professor Bubbles meets the defeated Dr. Pop. But instead of spoiling the ending, I challenge you to try out the beta version of the full game and see if you are tough enough to reach the ultimate finish line. Alright, thank you very much for watching. Now that the game is actually 99.99% completed, I'm looking forward to push the final, probably a post-mortem style devlog out early 2024. So see you then and bye bye.